Have you ever felt that persistent, quiet sensation that you are simply throwing your life away? No matter how intensely you strive to keep yourself occupied, encased in a fortress of daily tasks, social circles, ambitious targets, and endless obligations, there remains an underlying, persistent tremor. Deep within the hidden recesses of your mind, it feels as though something fundamental, something indispensable, is entirely missing. You move, you breathe, you fulfill your daily roles, yet you are merely existing rather than truly living. Perhaps you have attempted to rationalize this chronic discontent by labeling it as anxiety. Perhaps a medical practitioner sat across from you, assigned the word depression to your condition, and offered a chemical prescription designed to silence that internal friction. A small pill to usher in the morning, another to quiet the night. And as the months slip away, you find yourself numbing the very alarm system that was trying to warn you of a vital truth. Allow me to offer you a different perspective. What if this profound suffering of yours is not an error of nature? What if this pain is not a biological malfunction to be erased or suppressed, but rather a direct call from your inner self? Throughout my decades of investigating the depths of the human psyche, I came to understand that what modern medicine so readily classifies as a psychological disorder is very often not a pathology at all. It is, in reality, an attempt by the psyche to heal itself. It is an urgent, instinctive signal arriving from the subconscious to inform you that your current way of living no longer serves your soul. You may be walking through a routine that was quietly imposed upon you by external expectations, enduring a vocation that slowly drains your vital energy, maintaining personal relationships that leave you feeling hollow, or chasing ambitions that never actually belong to you. Meanwhile, your true essence is suffocating, crying out for release. Yet no one ever taught you how to interpret that inner cry. On the contrary, society systematically conditions us to suppress it, to remain agreeable, to stay productive, and to refrain from disrupting the established order. Thus, we sicken in total solitude while the world around us applauds our functional efficiency. True healing can never be achieved through denial or suppression. It can only begin through a deliberate descent into the interior. It is never a matter of merely wiping away external symptoms, but of comprehending the specific message those symptoms carry. In my clinical experience, I observed time and again that a neurosis is invariably a substitute for legitimate suffering. Put simply, one becomes sick because one is fleeing from the essential pain required to transform one's existence. So long as you continue to run from this inner confrontation, the suffering will adapt and persist. What I wish to offer you is not a pleasant distraction. It is intended solely for those who have grown weary of the masks they wear daily, for those who feel themselves sinking beneath the weight of an empty existence, yet still harbor a faint expectation that a genuine path forward exists. There is indeed a path forward, but it demands an unyielding decision. You must cease your flight and begin to listen. You must listen to your dreams, to the promptings of your unconscious mind, and to the very agony you have sought to drown out through constant activity, artificial stimulants, and rigid routines. That persistent emptiness you carry is not a sign of personal weakness. It is the tangible result of your own absence within your own life. Consider what transpires when you seek help for this condition. You experience a heavy, inexplicable sadness for weeks or months. You schedule a brief consultation with a physician. He listens to your account for a few hurried minutes. You describe your fractured sleep, the sudden constriction in your chest, and that unsettling feeling of being completely detached from your daily existence. He nods, enters a few notes into a terminal, and delivers a diagnosis. You are suffering from an anxiety disorder, and here is a prescription to manage it. In an instant, your profound existential crisis has been reduced to a simple chemical imbalance, and what was once a meaningful plea from your innermost depth is reduced to a code on a pill bottle. What remains unsaid in those clinical rooms is that such an approach is entirely unconcerned with the state of your soul. Its primary goal is the maintenance of your functional capacity. The logic driving modern society is straightforward. The machinery of commerce and social routine must continue uninterrupted. You must remain capable of working, acquiring, and producing. The medication is provided so that the unbearable may be rendered tolerable, and for this reason, it is presented as a definitive remedy. Yet this remedy represents a profound trap. The majority of modern neuroses do not originate from an intrinsic failure of cerebral chemistry, but from a radical severance between the life an individual actually leads and the life they were inherently meant to live. When you systematically disregard your inner calling, your authentic inclinations, and your deepest psychological truths, the psyche inevitably falls ill. Lacking a literal voice with which to address you, it begins to speak through the language of the body and the mind, manifesting as panic, chronic apprehension, and a dark loss of hope. Instead of deciphering these manifestations, we are taught to neutralize every instance of psychological distress with chemical agents, returning ourselves to what is deemed normal as quickly as possible. But what constitutes this normal state? It is a career that brings no genuine fulfillment, shallow social interactions maintained solely for appearances, arbitrary goals, mechanical daily habits, and an enduring sense that one is merely enduring existence rather than partaking in it. The anxiety you carry is not a structural failure. It is your soul declaring, "This path is not yours. You are betraying your true nature." If you ignore this interior declaration for long enough, the warning signals will become increasingly severe, yet the societal apparatus stands ready with elevated dosages, revised diagnostic labels, and more potent sedatives. The more completely you adapt to this artificial standard, the further you drift from your true center, until you reach a state of complete numbness where neither genuine joy nor genuine pain can reach you. This is the condition many mistakenly label as mature adulthood. I have long cautioned that by medicating a psychological symptom without investigating its underlying root, we merely construct a dangerous illusion of recovery. The individual appears restored on the surface, yet remains entirely lost within. Over time, this severe division between what is felt internally and what is lived externally leads to a far more destructive psychological collapse. There is no possibility of evading the demands of the soul forever. It will eventually exact its price, whether through severe exhaustion, sudden emotional breakdown, or a vast internal void that no external remedy can ever fill. This widespread reliance on medicalization reflects a profound collective sickness, a culture that has lost the capacity to engage with suffering, treating all pain with terror because it no longer grasps the transformative value inherent within hardship. Suffering is not a senseless error. It is often the indispensable beginning of psychological awakening. It is the initial summons toward self-realization. Yet modern society insists on labeling every form of psychic distress as an abnormal state to be eliminated. By running from our suffering, we inadvertently run from the sole opportunity to become who we were truly destined to be. We must ask ourselves how many individuals are currently being silenced by interventions that merely obscure the core problem. How many lives are being slowly eroded in the pursuit of an artificial, fragile stability? How many psychological journeys have been aborted before they could even begin? To comprehend this dilemma, we must examine the cultural structures that shape our identities and the ways of living that frequently serve as the true source of our illness. The difficulty may not reside within your nature at all, but within a collective environment that systematically conditions you to reject your authentic self. It is remarkable to observe how many individuals endure profound emotional suffering while surrounded by unprecedented material abundance, advanced technology, and apparent personal liberties. We possess access to vast reserves of information and constant stimulation, yet we have never been so profoundly alienated from our own internal nature. The source of modern psychological distress does not originate solely within the individual mind. It is continuously generated by the cultural environment into which we are born. The problem is fundamentally collective and structural. We inhabit a civilization that prioritizes external appearance over intrinsic reality, rewarding functional efficiency while completely ignoring the requirements of the soul. From early childhood, we are carefully trained to follow an established script, obtain an education, secure a stable profession, maintain constant productivity, acquire possessions, present a cheerful countenance to the public, and carefully conceal any trace of vulnerability. We are systematically instructed to seek approval, to compete, and to prevail over others. Yet almost no effort is made to teach us how to listen to our instinctive wisdom, how to process our deep emotional states, or how to determine what truly bestows value upon our existence. This widespread absence of personal meaning is no accident. It is the natural consequence of our social conditioning. We have been brought up to believe that our personal worth is derived entirely from external factors, from our professional titles, our financial compensation, and the validation we receive from others. This is a fatal mistake. When your sense of self is contingent upon external metrics, you remain perpetually vulnerable to inner collapse, drifting ever further from your unconscious depths and your true center. It is within this growing distance that the internal void takes root. Slowly and silently, this emptiness permeates your daily life. You fulfill every external obligation and meet every societal metric, yet you remain plagued by a persistent sense of displacement. You feel as though you are enacting a role in a play written by someone else, aware that something is fundamentally wrong, yet unable to articulate the source of your distress. What you are experiencing is not a personal failure, but a state of profound alienation. It is a separation from that which is genuine, spontaneous, and instinctive within you. It is precisely this state of internal division that feeds the most severe psychological disturbances. Regrettably, the surrounding culture has little incentive to address this alienation, as individuals who are disconnected from their true selves are far easier to manage. They consume goods predictably, rarely question established norms, and follow directives without resistance. They are convenient, manageable, and dependable components of the collective machinery. When they inevitably break down under the weight of chronic stress, anxiety, or despair, the system offers temporary palliatives rather than fundamental truths. If an individual is to achieve genuine psychological health, they must be willing to confront the societal influences that have harmed them. One must examine how one was conditioned, what aspects of oneself were forced into hiding, and what essential qualities were sacrificed to secure social acceptance. This is an uncomfortable undertaking, as it requires acknowledging that much of your life may have been lived in service to an illusion, that you deformed your natural character to fit a mold that suffocated your spirit, allowing yourself to be tamed by a culture that fears the unvarnished human soul. Yet this painful recognition represents the only genuine way forward. Only by identifying the true origin of your inner emptiness can you begin the work of filling it with authentic substance. This process of psychological restoration is what I termed individuation, the rigorous, transformative journey toward becoming an undivided, complete human being. There arrives a moment in life when the pain of self-estrangement can no longer be ignored, when the social mask we wear becomes an intolerable burden, and we realize with sudden clarity that we are living as mere fragments of our potential self. It is at this precise point of collapse that the process of individuation becomes possible. Individuation is far removed from superficial self-improvement or minor behavioral adjustments. It refers to a profound internal transformation through which an individual ceases to be a mere reflection of external influences, of family expectations, cultural conditioning, and collective opinions, and begins to realize their true, inherent nature. Individuation is the path towards psychic wholeness. It occurs when you stop attempting to conform to the expectations of others and begin to honor the authentic demands of your own psyche. This trajectory is neither smooth nor easy. On the contrary, it requires a direct confrontation with everything within yourself that has been repressed, ignored, or denied. It requires an exploration of the personal unconscious, the repository of unintegrated experiences, suppressed impulses, and unexamined beliefs. Individuation commences when you cease running from these hidden elements and choose instead to bring them into the light of awareness. The most demanding aspect of this journey is the encounter with the shadow, that obscure, instinctive, and untamed aspect of the personality that you have been conditioned to hide from view. It contains the anger you never permitted yourself to express, the jealousy you refuse to acknowledge, and the primitive impulses that cause you shame. Those who look outside merely dream. Those who look within awaken. Looking within demands that you examine your shadow directly, stripped of all self-deception, excuses, and artificial moral superiority. Why is this encounter so essential? Because so long as the shadow remains unacknowledged, it dictates your behavior from behind the scenes. You remain its unwitting subject. Yet, when brought into consciousness and integrated into the total personality, the shadow ceases to be a destructive force and becomes a source of vital strength, genuine creativity, and authentic power. You can only achieve a genuine life when you stop waging war against your own nature and reconcile with the full scope of your internal reality. Individuation is ultimately the restoration of inner harmony, the re-establishment of a conscious relationship with the self, which serves as the central organizing principle of the total psyche. Herein lies a great paradox. While the external world constantly demands that you perfect yourself according to its standards, true psychological maturity requires that you become whole. It asks not that you become flawless, but that you become real, not that you fit neatly into society, but that you become psychologically free. The resolution you seek will never be found by adapting more successfully to an unhealthy environment, but by aligning your conscious life with the deeper truth of your being. This path can be intensely solitary and demanding, yet it is the only path that offers enduring meaning to human existence. When you begin to live from your true center, your values shift, your relationships alter their character, and the nature of your suffering changes. Hardship ceases to be a meaningless punishment and becomes an indispensable element of your personal evolution. Why then do so many individuals resist this necessary journey? Why do so many choose to remain in a state of psychic numbness, endlessly repeating destructive patterns and avoiding any real encounter with their own depth? The explanation lies in the pervasive problem of modern life, the profound loss of personal meaning. Observe the lives of those around you. How many people do you see who appear to be merely going through the motions of life? They follow a rigid, automatic routine dominated by hollow commitments, superficial diversions, and a deep, underlying exhaustion that no amount of physical rest can relieve. This form of quiet desperation is not an accidental occurrence, it is an existential crisis. Much of the acute psychological distress experienced today stems from a single, unyielding reality. The sense of meaning has drained out of life. Meaning is not a grand, abstract theory or a distant fantasy. It is the practical alignment between your daily actions and your underlying nature, the experience of living in accordance with an internal truth, rather than submitting to the external demands of a culture that celebrates material success while starving the spirit. I observed in my clinical practice that severe psychological symptoms, paralyzing anxiety, deep melancholy, chronic apathy, frequently dissolved when a patient succeeded in discovering an authentic purpose for their existence. This transformation was not brought about by artificial stimulants or financial gain, but by the discovery of a genuine why. Human nature is capable of enduring almost any degree of hardship if there is a compelling reason to do so. Yet without that underlying purpose, even the greatest material comforts feel hollow, and the most celebrated achievements yield only a temporary satisfaction. We are currently living through a quiet epidemic of internal emptiness. People are exhausted not simply by the volume of their physical tasks, but by the utter lack of purpose behind them. They lead lives overcrowded with obligations, yet completely destitute of direction. Human beings possess an innate need to feel that their individual existence carries weight, consequence, and significance. Deprived of this experience, the internal structure collapses, and suffering degenerates into aimless disorientation. The soul demands a meaningful direction, Yet the modern world offers only endless diversions, instantaneous validation, superficial entertainment, simplistic formulas, and mechanical efficiency techniques. These are all attempts to soothe an internal void that can only be healed through absolute honesty with oneself. The plain truth is that many people are living a life they never truly chose. They were quietly steered down paths that satisfied the expectations of others while betraying their own nature. They selected careers completely divorced from their core values, maintained relationships that systematically diminished their spirit, and adopted routines that gradually erased their individuality day after day. The body registers this ongoing betrayal. The mind loses its resilience and the psyche contracts. There is no external chemical agent capable of remedying a total lack of meaning, for what is missing is not a neurotransmitter, but a genuine direction, not a surge of temporary pleasure, but an authentic identity. This is precisely why depth psychology remains so vital for our time. Its objective is not merely to restore an individual to basic functional efficiency within a broken system, but to assist them in living authentically, to cultivate the courage necessary to declare, "This existence is not mine, and I will no longer participate in this self-deception." To reconstruct a meaningful life when everything in your environment encourages distraction, you must establish a conscious relationship with the unconscious mind. For it is within those overlooked depths of your personality that the keys to your authentic purpose remain hidden. Most people profess a desire for psychological healing, yet very few are truly willing to endure the process it requires. Contrary to popular assumptions, real inner transformation does not begin with superficial optimism or the simple adoption of new habits. It begins with a rigorous descent into the depths of your own psyche. The unconscious mind is far more than a simple storage vault for forgotten memories or old emotional wounds. It represents a vast, symbolic inner world that retains all the aspects of your nature that have been denied, abandoned, or forgotten. It holds your most genuine creative instincts, your deepest anxieties, and your most vital truths. Everything you have sought to avoid remains preserved there, awaiting recognition. This internal reality is of paramount importance because whatever you fail to integrate within the unconscious will inevitably influence your life from behind the scenes. What you fail to bring into conscious awareness will return to you as external fate. You may believe yourself to be consistently unfortunate in personal relationships, yet you may be unconsciously repeating the very dynamics that produce failure. You may feel continuously thwarted in your ambitions, yet harbor an unconscious dread of real responsibility. You may perceive yourself as a passive victim of circumstances, while remaining entirely driven by unexamined childhood patterns. The unconscious functions much like an unyielding mirror. It reflects your actual nature rather than the idealized image you prefer to project. This encounter can be deeply unsettling, as it exposes the artificiality of the persona you constructed for self-protection, demanding that you relinquish the illusion of total conscious control and acknowledge your internal complexity. Yet within this difficult confrontation lies the sole possibility of genuine recovery. The more persistently you deny the unconscious, the more completely it exerts its hidden influence over your choices, leaving you reactive, impulsive, and divided. Conversely, as you gradually bring its contents into conscious awareness, you achieve a state of genuine internal unity. This expansion of consciousness occurs only when you cease your outward flight and turn your attention inward. It is facilitated through the study of dreams, symbolic expressions, genuine creative engagement, deep reflection, and serious self-examination. The unconscious does not communicate through abstract intellect. It speaks through images, visceral impressions, and spontaneous emotional states. These inner phenomena are not meaningless aberrations. They are expressions of your lost self, seeking reintegration. When you begin to pay attention to these internal communications, your perspective undergoes a fundamental shift. You acquire clarity regarding your true motivations, learn to understand the origin of your psychological wounds, and reclaim your inherent power. So long as you remain ignorant of what resides within your depth, you remain an unwitting hostage to past conditioning, collective pressures, and unexamined fears. When you courageously explore the unconscious, you begin to liberate yourself from that bondage. You come to realize that the anxiety that once paralyzed you was not an unprovoked attack, but an urgent message that the sadness attending your daily routine was not a sign of fundamental weakness, but a signal that an outdated way of living needed to die so that a more authentic life could be born. This undertaking requires time, unwavering patience, and a willingness to leave behind the safety of superficial assumptions. Yet it remains the only path that yields true authenticity. From this grounded state, you can begin to rebuild your existence, no longer as a passive instrument of unconscious drives, but as the conscious author of your own trajectory. Having recognized the central role of the unconscious in both your distress and your potential transformation, a final decisive question presents itself. What continues to hold you back from undertaking this essential journey? Why do so many individuals, even when vaguely aware of their internal division, remain frozen in place, continuing to live on automatic pilot, and endlessly repeating a life devoid of genuine meaning? The answer is fear. It is the fear of real change, the fear of losing social approval, and the fear of stepping away from the familiar, even when that familiarity is demonstrably destructive. There comes a point where a fundamental choice must be made, a choice that clearly separates who you actually are from who you were conditioned to be. It is the decision of whether you will persist in leading a borrowed, numbed, and unfulfilled existence, or finally honor your obligation to your own soul.